Listen, speculation, the other way to think about it is whenever you want to get rich quick, you're probably speculating.
Yeah.
When you want to get rich slowly, you're probably investing.
Yeah, that's a good
Good one.
That's a good way to put it.
Give him an ounce of fucking gold.
Instinctively, they control the banking system, and so crypto's a threat to them, even though he intellectually has to understand the power of what's going on.
So does this put a bunch of condo owners who are middle class into more debt to pay for their condo, to try to keep their condo, and now the system ends up winning versus the actual middle class person? Episode 31. We are back. Business Untitled. Here with my co-star, Dave Berry, and Mike Novogratz. Let's jump right into it. Roaring Kitty is back. So this guy, wait, we gotta tell the people, everybody already know. This guy is the guy, I think they have a great Netflix, either series or a short.
No, movie.
It's a movie. Movie on him about the guy who made GameStop. Remember a couple of years ago, everybody was like GameStop, and this is the guy who did it. This guy went in front of the FCC, vanished for 3 years, and yesterday he tweeted a picture of his a drawing sitting in front of a computer, and GameStop went up 200%. And then it went up another 63% after his other tweet. So, what do you guys think of that? Roaring Kitty is back. Are you scared? Because it was for guys like you.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. The broader hedge fund community learned a lesson not to be short in big size, low price stocks with high option value. And so the big hedge funds aren't participating in that like they did last time. And where, you know, there's
Roaring Kitty scared
two
them.
of the best hedge funds in the world one got put out of business and one almost got put out of business because of this.
Last time around.
The last time around. So it's a bit shocking. Roaring Kitty shows up, and literally today, GameStop is a $15 billion company.
What was it before he came back?
About $3 billion, right? It's up, yeah.
Yeah.
The people.
AMC went from almost very, very little to a $2 billion company.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's telling is AMC had a thing called an at-the-money stock offering, which means the CEO can sell stock for the company whenever he wants. They prearrange it.
Yeah.
And so he dumped all the stock he could. Like, so when the CEO's selling, usually it's probably not a great time to be buying.
Yeah.
And so these stocks will go up for a couple days. They're more dangerous now to buy than to sell. They were more dangerous, 2 days ago the other way, but they've gone up so high with pretty near certainty within a few days, they'll be much lower.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you this, right? Meme stocks, general definition, but they're generally considered speculative, right? In a sense, right?
Of
or
course.
You could say they're an investment. Some people might be like,
gambling.
they're not. Yeah. Well, are they gambling or are they investing, right? And so I just want to understand a little bit what your definition or how you would describe speculation versus investment and where a meme stock fits into that.
So meme stocks, definitely speculation. There's not an underlying value to them. There is this mimemic value that they're a moment in culture that people want to participate with. And doesn't mean they're not a real asset class now. There are so many different meme stocks, and half of crypto is very memey. But I would put that squarely in the speculation bucket. And I think of the way I separate speculation and investment is time frame, right? If you're making an investment in a Bojangles or in Apple stock, you're making it based on a thesis of what's this company going to do over a long period of time. When you're speculating, it's often momentum-based. It's psychology-based. It's shorter time frame.
Right.
Often it's higher volatility. It doesn't have to be. But because of that, it's often higher risk.
Right.
And so it doesn't mean you can't take a whole lot of risk investing. You can.
Yep.
Right? You can lose a ton of money investing. But, it's all in the same, it's what you call
Birds
things.
of a feather.
But it's a pretty decent way to think of the difference between speculating and investing.
Yeah, because you know what I'm saying? It's like speculation all of a sudden means like, oh, I'm gambling, right?
Yeah.
There's a negative connotation, but it's kind of interesting that it's not. You can't just put a black line on this is investing and this is speculation, right? It's like this thing that it's a little bit in the mind of the eye of the beholder in a way too,
Yeah, of
right?
course.
You may at times think I am investing, even if you think it's speculation or
Yeah.
vice versa, and I think it's pretty interesting to think about that. But it's narrative driven, basically.
Macro investors are speculators at our core.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We're momentum based. We're a story plus a chart.
Yeah.
What's the fundamental story? What's the psychological story? What's the movement we're seeing? And does the ballet of the prices tell us something?
Talking about that, right? I was about to buy this painting, and it just hit me as you said, I could think it's investing, and you think it's speculating, right? Was that like a kick to stop?
No. Sorry, I was just adjusting my foot.
And I was going to spend $100,000 on this painting,
Yeah.
and I called you.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah,
a
I
few
do,
weeks
of
ago.
course, yeah.
And in my mind, I was like, this is a great investment, right? And then you broke it down, and you was like, you're kind of speculating, and it might be wrong.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, fuck it, I'm not buying it. So talk
Swear
about
jar.
Yeah.
yeah, swear jar.
Called
So
it that.
that's exact. And as you just said that, in my mind,
Yeah.
because I know whatever it is I thought I knew,
Mm-hmm.
it felt like an investment. And when you broke it down, it was like, damn, you're speculating this, and it could go really wrong,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
talk about why did you
Yeah,
give me that
it's
advice?
a
and
good
is that
point.
was I speculating or investing?
think you were
He didn't like the artist.
No,
No,
he
I
loved the
love
artist. He has a piece
What are
from
you
the
talking about?
artist.
Yeah. I was reading your mind, right?
Yeah.
And I think that your expectation was you were going to flip this thing quick
Yeah.
and make a quick profit on it. And when I looked at that motivation, I'm like, well, that's really speculating. You don't have
Back to
excuse
duration.
me,
back
you
to-
don't have
back to
enough
horizon.
knowledge around that subject matter.
Yeah.
It is true when someone like Larry Gagosian is investing in art and he's a subject matter expert and he's thinking about long term and other artist streams that have gone like this, it could absolutely be investment. But in that instance, I felt it was speculative because you were looking at a short time frame. You kind of wanted like a quick return in a short time frame, and you could get burned on that. Pretty easily without knowing. And the other thing I brought up in that context was, if you're not in the art market, you don't know what you're doing. The friction to sell a piece is like 25, 30%.
Oh,
So,
and I didn't know that.
right. So you have money, there's no friction. I give you $10, you give me $10, right? There's it's literally frictionless. That's the purpose of money. But and then stocks you trade, it's a hundredth or a tenth of a point or whatever it might be on what exchange for commissions. But art, you're going to pay some auction house or dealer 30, 40% to move that piece.
You would trade. That was a good call. Thank you.
I think so.
One more question about meme stocks. Why is it all comedy driven?
Because it's first of all, most of the meme traders are young, right? They're 30 and under.
Yeah.
And this is a way they're expressing their humor and their angst in some degree. And they're funny as shit. Like, why is dog with hat so funny? Why do they WIF with hat?
Yeah.
It's just called whiff. And
How
then they
about-
all play on that.
How about
it's funny.
this?
Look at dog with hat. You'll laugh.
Yeah. How about this? I don't know if you remember, they made me, we built a gingerbread, what was it? Gingerbread
house.
A gingerbread house, one of the whitest things I've ever done. We built gingerbread houses. We took a picture that day. What was that, like right before Christmas, right?
Yeah.
Someone, I think you posted it, or somebody posted it. Someone took the dog with hat and put on our pictures.
Oh, really?
At the time, I didn't know what it was. Yeah, and if we had bought $10,000 worth of dog with hat that day when they made a joke out of it, how much it would have been worth right now?
Let's start with that. Probably 80.
1,000?
Yeah.
I think a lot more.
No. It had already moved a decent bit.
Oh, okay,
But
okay.
but still,
That's crazy.
meme stocks. Listen, speculation. The other way to think about it is whenever you want to get rich quick, you're probably speculating.
Yeah.
When you want to get rich slowly, you're probably investing.
Yeah. That's a good
That's
way.
a good one.
That's a good way to put it.
Give him an ounce of fucking gold.
Yeah. I
we go.
was also going to say with this little piece of the meme stock, the anger, the volatility, just the emotional volatility around it seems more tamped down. It seems like a news story, but not what it was last time, where
Last
it was
time
a
it was
revolution.
a revolution.
Yeah,
it was really a way of of Gen Z and millennial angst to
Yeah.
flip the bird at the system,
Yeah.
thinking that the system was rigged against them and they were going to take out the big guys.
Yeah.
And now it's just there's this, way of these young people investing and all trying to. It's a little bit past the parcel, right?
Yeah.
You played when you were a kid. You pass it around. It's going to go up until people stop buying, and then it's going to go back down.
Yeah.
And now people have no money.
What?
People don't have money like they did in 2020.
I tell you, the most interesting chart. I love looking at charts to look at is savings in America. Or you can look at savings. The reverse of savings is credit card debt. So during COVID, when we were giving everybody money and people were staying at home, everyone paid their credit card debt down.
Mm-hmm.
And now, since about 2022, straight line up.
Mm-hmm.
And today, we're at record levels of credit card debt in America. And so you're right. People are borrowing more, having less,
Yeah.
broadly speaking.
Yeah, and it's a good point because during COVID, when they had put all those stimulus checks in, that was
Yeah.
fueling crypto and meme stocks at that time. Not entirely, and LVMH, right?
Yeah. Because of it, I don't think these,
Yeah.
and so my advice, and this podcast coming out tomorrow, is I'd be really, really, really cautious at buying GameStop or AMC.
Yeah.
Oh, Ron Kitty's coming after you, bro.
Yeah.
I will take Roy and Kitty and beat that guy senseless. Just kidding. I love Roy and Kitty.
Yeah, and the other thing to remember is, you don't need to have an opinion on every single security out there. You could just sit it out, right? If it doesn't
Yeah.
feel like it's going
Mel
one way
hates
or
sitting out.
Yeah. But, don't get caught up in the narrative. If you don't have a strong conviction either way, just wait for the next investment.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Robinhood, man. Robinhood, we went to Robinhood's, what was it, 25th or 20th?
No, come on. 30, I think it's 36th year of Robinhood.
I should know this because I'm a proud Robinhood
You know what's
board
crazy?
member now.
In 2007, I was one of the co-hosts, and I stood on stage, and I had like one line, which was, "When you leave Robinhood tonight, you're going to look up and see the Empire State Building lighted up in green for Robinhood." And that was my line. I said it. I felt good about myself. And Dina Powell, who's the chairman of Robinhood, said that exact same line last night, and I was like, "Oh my God, that was 17 years ago."
Crazy.
How fast time goes.
Yeah.
But it's the number one charity for poverty relief in any city in America. It's all focused on New York City, but it's the largest charity. $68 million raised last night. It's the largest fundraiser in America every year. It's kind of like the Academy Awards for New York. You see everybody there. From the governor was there. You see the mayor was there. I saw Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan District Attorney. You see athletes and models and rich guys. And
Yeah.
Basketball player, what was his name?
Stephon Marbury.
Stephon
you saw
Marbury.
Stephon Marbury.
Shout out to Stefan.
Shout
Had a nice
out to
conversation
Chef.
with him.
New York Knicks.
Yeah.
And so a lot of fun. Post Malone.
Post Malone. Shout out to Monty Lippman for getting Post Malone.
Yeah.
Post Malone crushed it last night.
I was shocked
Yeah,
how
it's
good
fun.
Post Malone was. He was 10 out of 10.
deal.
You thought he wasn't
I thought he'd be good, but I didn't think he'd be that good.
He's really fucking good.
Got a lot of
You know
tattoos.
what? I was surprised Mumford and Sons was that good. I never really heard any of this stuff.
Mumford & Sons played the Talk House a few years ago.
They were really
I was
good.
like, wow, they've got voices.
All right. Shout out to Robinhood. What else we got?
Real estate. You were talking about a few years back, the collapse of
Oh yeah, that building that collapsed in Miami. Was it Miami?
It was,
And
yeah,
killed
it was
all those
Miami,
people.
North
right
Miami, yeah.
outside
North
of Miami.
That was crazy.
So that was
What's the name of that property again?
Surfside.
Surfside.
So it was kind of interesting. I read today that, and I'm to recap, Surfside was a condo just north of Miami. I think it was Miami
The
Beach
Jewish
or near Aventura. And tragically, about I don't know if it was 3 or 4 years ago, it collapsed, killed a bunch of people. It was a big deal. They had a search and rescue going on, and so what that did is. Of course, the legislators, as they should, were concerned because it was a building that didn't have reserves or improvements put into it for many years. Because you have you have to look at a structure of a condo versus a rental apartment building. Let's talk about this for 1 second because it's important, right? In a rental building, there's typically one owner, and that owner can be held responsible for what's going on. So something happens in one of my buildings, someone's like, well, you didn't put necessary structural repairs in, you're liable, right? And so therefore, I'm incentivized to always make sure my buildings are safe.
For every apartment.
For every apartment. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I'm on the hook if you own that building,
Yeah.
right? Condos and co-ops, very different structure, right? Lots of people own, 100 people, 200 people all own. They elect a board, The board changes all the time. Every year, new people are coming on and off. So when you look at something like Surfside, for one, what's really interesting is there was 30 years of neglect that went into that building. When
But
it
isn't the
collapses,
board responsible for that
they
somehow?
are responsible, but think about it. Didn't all just happen. Let's say I'm here. I just got elected onto the board 6 months ago, and now that building collapses. Am I responsible? It's decades before these boards making bad decisions. In fact, this guy that was on the board sold his apartment in 1993 and moved to Idaho. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
And so it's this really diffuse ownership structure, which leads to a lot of irresponsibility. So the state comes in, as they should have, and made some stronger rules around deferred maintenance. And right now we're talking about condos and co-ops, but in general, if you're buying real estate, et cetera, you have to be aware of what's the shape of this building. Am I gonna have to put a new roof on?
Yeah.
But in these instances, what's really tragic is you got these hundreds of people, they've bought condos, say for $300,000, and in these older buildings, let's say older than 30 years old, and now the state made a law that all these condos have to have fully funded reserve accounts, which is a big deal by January 1st. And so
Yeah, explain that to me better.
means
What does that mean?
it means that all the 30 years that you were not putting like 1% of your revenues away to build up a nest egg in case something went wrong
You
one
have to
day.
backtrack that now?
You have to backtrack it all.
Holy shit.
And so some of these buildings are getting bills of $30 million among like 150 residents that they have to fund. So you bought a condo for $300,000. Now you get a bill for $150,000.
But wait, here's a question.
Yep.
Just like you said,
Yeah.
the guy that moved to Idaho, is he responsible for some of that money?
No,
No,
once you're gone,
absolutely
you're
not.
That's
No, absolutely not.
really messed up.
Yeah, because our system, the rules are, if I have a condo or a house or something, typically that contract, I'm going to write, okay, you're buying this as is, where is. You do all your inspections, but once you take it, it's yours. You can't sue me for anything unless I intentionally withheld something from you.
Yeah.
But in these instances, some guy that sold 10 years ago, he doesn't know this is happening, right? And so, no, everybody was out. All of a sudden, whoever's there gets billed with
So now in
$150,000.
Florida,
Yeah.
we've got old buildings that have these huge assessments coming,
Yep.
and you've got newer buildings that are in much better shape.
That's
and less.
right.
And so what's happening to the prices of those buildings?
So this is really interesting, actually. Buildings that are newer than, I think, 10 years old or something like that have appreciated almost 40% since 2020. Buildings that are older than 30 years, right, much more deferred maintenance, have actually depreciated. Value has declined 12% since 2020 in Miami.
Wow.
Miami, one of the hottest condo markets, real estate markets in the country. Everything else is going up 40%. These are going down 12%. And guess who those residents are? Middle class, old people.
So you're here to hear it first, buy new. Or if you're buying old, make sure the thing's in good shape.
Yeah.
So you can't afford to buy new if you're middle class, and now you got to pay this
That's right.
crazy backlog of $30 million
Yeah,
or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and it raises an interesting question, right? Because, where's the role? Okay, the government's going to legislate this, and I think that's reasonable because you don't want another Surfside. That was awful, right? But at the same time, they could also do something, put a 1% loan into condo, right? They'll match your funds or something like that. So instead of $30 million, it's $15 million. It's a loan, and they pay, because there's a lot of money for people. Somebody that's got a $300,000 condo that's got to pay a $150,000 assessment, or basically dump their house on the
insane.
market. It's really regressive.
Horrible.
So what do you think happens there? Because I could almost bet that most of these people that bought a $300,000 condo do not have $150 grand
right.
laying around.
None of them.
So
No,
so
that's
wait,
right.
here's the question, right? Now with this system we have, obviously you could go take a loan on your condo. So does this put a bunch of condo owners who are middle class into more debt to pay for their condo, to try to keep their condo, and now the system ends up winning versus the actual middle class person? Does it help people get poorer?
Great. It's a great question. The fact is, if they could take a loan, they probably would, but it's depressed values so much that these buildings are selling for less than they were, and nobody knows if they're going to continue to go down. So, in fact, lenders are actually doing the opposite. They're trying to get pay downs because they're so worried about this. And so, if you look at the inventory of older condos in Florida over the last year and a half, through the roof, you know. And I just think it's an interesting problem because as the government, if you're going to create that situation, now you see what's happening, then maybe you have to allocate some money. Again, it doesn't have to be a grant. It could be a low interest loan to help defer this, but it's going to hurt the middle class disproportionately. I think there's another lesson in there, which is like if you're shopping for real estate, whether it's condo, a co-op, or just a piece of land, a piece of property, you just got to look in the fine print, right? Like, you got to discover, even when there's not this law, it could be New York, it could be New Jersey, it doesn't matter. You know, what kind of deferred maintenance has this building been taken care of? Don't just shortcut it. Like, get an engineer, get some professionals, look at what's going on so that you really get a clear picture of what's going to happen, because these people were just like whipsawed.
Here's a thought that I have, right? And it's, I guess you could call it fucking poor or middle class.
It's another $20.
Who's going to add this up? Somebody add it up so we could pay, because Mike owes for
interrupting. I don't curse
interrupting.
anymore.
Interrupting is $20 too.
Well, you can interrupt for cursing.
It's $40, $50.
No, so look, right? So is there a world, maybe it's just my mind racing, as you're saying this, I see 70% of these middle class, maybe even 80% of them not being able to afford these fees, right?
Right.
Having to sell.
Yeah.
And some giant corporation coming in, buying all of it because they could afford to, spending the money, redoing those apartments, and making a ton of money off it.
The biggest buyers in the housing market in the last 5
That
years.
was for Dave.
Well, I can answer the question.
Yeah, you can answer. No, and it's a good point. It's
I'm
a good
just
point.
messing with
but
him.
I know it's a good point. But what I will say also, and I did read this about these Florida things, and Mike is correct that, you know, these big money funds, non-bank money funds like Blackstone and Brookfield and guys like that have been buying a lot of single-family rentals. It's a whole business model. But even in Florida, what's going on is even a little bit trickier, which is that if you are able to assemble enough of the condominiums or the units within a building, and I can't remember if it's like 75% or 80% or something like that, the rest of them have to come along with you and you can basically buy them by right. So what's really going on is investors are going in, they're trying to take these condos cheap, get enough of them, then force the sale of the rest, and then bam, knock it down or redo it and make them new. So
the poor loses again.
Yeah, the middle class or the poor in that context, unless, you know, look, the state could step in and do something like reasonable to preserve that. Do some loans.
What do you think?
What do you think?
That's your feel. What do you think the state could really, how would you solve this, President Mike?
Listen, politics are tough.
No talking about politics. Just how would you solve it?
It's always a political decision, right? It just is.
It's just not a political show at all. This is three guys, Mike, David, Mel, shooting the shit.
Let's give him a little context to that. Yeah, we learned that you can't be political shows on YouTube or you get put in YouTube jail, and so we're trying to stay less political. But these are political decisions on what you do, right? Governments are political.
Yeah.
And so do you take care of the little guy, or do you want to be, you know, the Republican Party in general is the party of less regulation, and the Democratic Party tends to be the party of more regulation. Yeah. Regulation can work and it can be overregulated, right? So what's the right balance? In general, most people in charge of a city want to take care of its citizens. And so if you're the mayor, you're probably trying to figure out a workaround on how to help people stay in their houses. Yeah. Right? In general, that's what you're trying to do. And so that's what you're trying to work on. Yeah. But it's tough when it's happening in mass. Yeah. Right? It's one building, okay.
It is.
But when it's literally, 60,
thousands.
70.
Oh, it's thousands.
Yeah,
how many do you think it is?
Tens of thousands of apartments. I know that. Tens and tens of thousands.
All right, let's move on.
You move on, Mike.
You're in charge.
I'm in charge.
All right, I want to talk a little bit.
Well, crypto's been interesting.
Okay, fine. Talk crypto.
Listen, it's a fascinating week in crypto.
Is that an interruption?
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about?
$20. No, I want you to go.
Crypto's been a fascinating week. It's been a fascinating week, and I'm going to be very gingerly around the politics again.
What's fascinating about it, though? Tell us.
Well, what's fascinating about it is that, I always say crypto should be bipartisan It's not Republican or Democrat. It's
Right.
kind of, Bitcoin's a bit libertarian, but the rest of crypto is really progressive. It's trying to cut out the middleman. And so every time I go to DC, I'm like, I meet with Republicans, I meet with Democrats, as this is bipartisan. And there's been a small group of Democrats that have held crypto back. So this week, there was a very arcane, and still going on, accounting rule called SAB 121 that the SEC had pushed that forced big custodians like Bank of New York or big banks and crypto companies to hold any crypto they had in custody as assets on their balance sheet, which makes absolutely no sense. And the result of that was the biggest custodians like Bank of New York or State Street, who would do great things for crypto because they would credentialize it, said, I can't do that because it'll blow my balance sheet up. And so a bunch of Republican congressmen got together, put a bill, said, this is stupid, we're going to overturn it. And it seemed like a smart thing to do. The president said he would veto it. And I scratched my head, I was like, the president vetoing an accounting rule change?
Yeah.
And that kind of triggered a fire. That was like the straw that broke the camel's back.
Oh.
People were like, Democrats hate crypto. And I'm a Democrat. I love crypto. But the Democratic leadership, and it's not all of them, right? Plenty of Democrats like crypto. Richie Torres from New York, Ro Khanna.
Why do you think Richie Torres and Ro Khanna like it?
Because they're
and
under
them-
50.
You think it's just an age thing,
They understand it. They see digital assets as part of America's future.
right?
And what you don't understand about Congress is they have a ton of subjects to get up to speed on. And so they look to people for leadership.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Warren is on the Senate Banking Committee, and she hates crypto. And lots of her colleagues have looked to her for leadership. She says no, so they say no. And so why this week was important was the community woke up and finally was like, enough. And at the same time, ex-president and candidate Trump came out and said, I'm going to be the crypto president. He got on stage with a guy named Ryan Selkis, who's a big guy in the crypto community, and said, there's enough people that like crypto that I'm going to support crypto. So in one day, you had one candidate saying crypto good and one candidate saying crypto bad. And I got on TV today, I was like, it's kind of like the Democrats went out and said, we don't like dogs. Like, they do that. There are more crypto owners in America than there are dog owners. Right? 65 million people own a dog. 85 million people own crypto.
Wow.
Wow.
And so, what are they doing? It's like the worst own goal I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And tons of my Democratic political friends are cringing. They're like, why are we doing this? But it's a small group. And why I thought it was so important, because up until now, it's gone back and forth. It now almost like a purity test.
Yeah.
Republican good, Democrat bad, if you're in crypto.
Yeah.
And for plenty of people who are not single issue voters,
Yeah.
for women who care a lot about, the right to choose, for a whole plethora of, voting is very complicated.
Yeah.
And so, but this was a big deal.
Yeah.
And I think it shifts the odds more towards the Republican side.
I think the narratives around crypto, or rather the belief systems around crypto, are so interesting to me, because on the one hand, you have this speculative aspect of meme coins and the tokenization that get traded in this speculative way, right? When you hear the kids talk about it, it's like, oh, this thing's going to triple in 2 months, or what have you, right?
100%.
But underneath that, you have these layer one systems, whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana, right? And they're really creating these whole new efficient industries, right, around DeFi, trying to around DeFi and NFTs, which are really interesting use cases. And it's just one of the things that's so interesting to me is, like, if you read, Chris Dixon, right, wrote a book recently, Read, Write, Own, which I think everybody should read. I think it's the best case. It is the best, 300-page case for why blockchain.
Read, write, own.
Read, write, own. The basic premise is the first generation of the internet was read, meaning all the information is on your phone, you're taking it in. Second was write, publish. That's social media. I can publish anything I want. The third, the promise of crypto, which Mike is still skeptical of, even though he's super right? Because the flywheel hasn't occurred yet. Let's just say that.
I'm not skeptical.
I'm
I
not
think
saying-
it'll
but the-
occur. I
but
just watch. It hasn't occurred yet.
Right, the flywheel hasn't occurred yet, but the third part is own, right? And it's the decentralized or like stakeholder democracy, if you will. And so it's such a core democratic value issue, because what's going on in the world is the big companies, which are typically Republican, again, the world's upside down, but when you look at Facebook and you look at Meta and you look at Amazon, you look at Google, right? And you look at the control they have over extracting value from creators and extracting...
They're typical Republican, you said. No.
Big companies are typical Republicans.
In
yes,
general.
in general. In
But
this
the tech companies,
landscape, the
right,
tech
different.
companies, but in general, big company is Republican bedrock, right? And Democrats want
Labor,
more, want more stakeholder democratization, right? Democracy of stakeholders and more distributed. And so what I think is so ironic is that blockchain is creating this environment where truly the people can take back the ownership of some of these systems if this flywheel is to occur. And so it's not just read, it's not just write, it's now own. And yet the Democrats, who should be most in favor of this, have no understanding of it whatsoever.
I have been.
And
I have been
basically
screaming.
think crypto's bad.
I have literally been screaming every time I go to DC. And it's interesting because there's plenty to get it, but there's a small handful. And the crazy part is I don't really understand Elizabeth Warren's reticence because she's dug in this hole and she won't get out
She doesn't
of it.
understand crypto.
And she's a very bright woman, and she does her work, and she may be too smart by half in this case, but the typical excuse from people that are smart is like, she wants control, and control is centralized, not decentralized. The banks they can control, crypto they can't.
She's right. She's also not young, right?
Yeah.
So she doesn't understand it. And her interpretation, in my opinion, is entirely as a casino stock. She thinks this is just gambling and rife speculation and capitalism, and she just doesn't, she's not even interested in understanding the bigger picture of why blockchain, NFTs, DeFi have some really...
So why do you think a
amazing
guy
things.
like, I get her, and I guess this guy's old too, but this guy has so many young people working for him. Funny enough, the young people working for him is
Who's this?
buying crypto. Jamie Dimon. Why does he not get it at all?
Jamie Dimon gets it. They have huge investment in blockchain.
I know they have
Huge
and
investment
that's
in blockchain.
misleading,
They have their
right?
own token. He completely believes and loves the blockchain. He likes to badmouth Bitcoin. You know, one of the things that people worry about that are in the system is that the system disrupts them.
Yeah.
Right? And so who could worry about Bitcoin? Well, if you're the Secretary of the Treasury and the dollar is your baby, and you're not doing a very good job keeping your books balanced, Bitcoin's like a report card. You don't want anyone to see it.
Yeah.
You don't want people to buy Bitcoin and sell the dollar.
Right.
It's why when like Balaji came out and said, "I'll bet $1 million it's going to $1 million," I was like, "Dude, don't do that because it's just going to antagonize the regulators, right?"
In a sense, Jamie Dimon, I would say, has the innovator's dilemma.
Yeah.
Right? You
But
know
he's
what I'm
still
saying?
buying on the side, right?
So the innovators...
he's not buying personally Bitcoin now.
Right, am I saying...
No, but his company.
The company doesn't buy it for its balance sheet. It facilitates
Oh,
Bitcoin
okay.
transactions. It's,
I
you know,
thought
they're
they
not
buy
buying
it for their
its
balance
you
sheet.
know.
Isn't the innovator's dilemma that it's basically the theory that like as your company gets big and really successful in something, banking, and something else you can see is really powerful, like Bitcoin, but you can't get your company to shift, right? I think that's innovator's dilemma, right,
listen.
in general. And that's, I think, a part of it too, right? Instinctively, they control the banking system, and so crypto's a threat to them, even though he intellectually has to understand the power of what's going on.
To be determined, but it's going to be a fascinating a couple years. What I'm sure of is the last 8 months, this whole industry, the digital assets, crypto industry, went through kind of puberty.
Yeah.
And it's now a young adult, and it's not going back. It doesn't mean the prices will go straight up. I think they're going to go kind of sideways for a while before they go up again.
Yeah.
But it's now a young adult, and there will be more digitalization. There'll be more tokenization. There'll be more Bitcoin usage. There'll be more stable coins every year for the next 50. And so that I say like with huge confidence. And I think Jamie knows that. I think all the bank heads know that. And so they are working. And quite frankly, as soon as there's regulatory clarity in the U.S., you're going to see a jump shift. And my competitors are going to stop going from, Coinbase or DRW to Jefferies and Goldman and Citibank.
Completely unrelated. But I sat with this kid today. I wouldn't say an interview, but kind of like, his dad asked me to meet with him. Great kid. He was such a smart kid, really, really smart. And his dad grew up in the hood, but his dad became a lawyer. He's he is probably the most successful criminal attorney in New York City, a guy, Darren Fields. Shout out to Darren Fields. I think he's never lost a murder or a gun case or something along those lines, or both. And I sat with his son, and his son was so smart. I think his mom's a sheriff. His dad's obviously a lawyer. Brilliant kid. He's inventing like something. And my assistant, Alston, same. And I was just like, wow, this is so crazy, because Mike used to always tell me his theory is your education is kind of like your education, and then the dinner tables you sit around, right? And that's why this whole show came about. And I was just thinking, my friend mom passed away a couple weeks ago. You guys both know about that. She was killed in Flatbush by a car. Another friend of mine, 2 days ago, his son was murdered by the cops. And I remember speaking, and it was like so much death is in my neighborhood, and not just Flatbush, but all inner city neighborhoods, everywhere, Atlanta, wherever. And I was just like, why is that? And I'm trying to figure out why. And I realized today, and I knew this for a long time, but today with this black kid in front of me, I realized how important education is, and how important that right dinner table, and having two parents or having educated parents to kind of lead you on the right path is. And I don't think it hit me that much as I look at your kids, both of you guys' kids, and they're great, smart, amazing kids, but they were raised with both parents. They were raised with educated moms, dads, so on and so forth. And watching that kid today, who isn't a rich kid, grew up in the suburbs, whatever the case is, but it was the same thing. And I was just trying to, what is your...
Well, listen, first time, before I want to pivot to something you said, because I think it's really important. The trauma of neighborhoods, right? So, like, question for you. If you think back on your last 30 years, how many people do you know that have been killed?
Easily over 300, right. Maybe pushing 400 at this point.
Right.
So how about, better question, in the last few months, you guys are two of my best friends. In the last 6 months, how many people that I've mentioned have been murdered?
15. Yeah.
That's 6 months.
Yeah. But think when he said 300 to 400 people, my number is that, other than old relatives that have passed away, 4 to 5 in my whole life.
Yeah.
College roommate, who passed, a few people who got sick. No one who got murdered. None.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Dave? Anyone?
No, like DWI accidents or, some things like that, but nothing like a violent murder.
So we're low single digits, and you're 400. Like that.
300 to 400, but yeah.
Yeah, but the magnitude of that is so profound. And so you think every kid in your neighborhood, the trauma they are having to deal with, literally just to make it to the next year. And so you're almost all dealing with a huge deficit of emotional support, of just even getting it out of your body.
There's people, which is shocking and unbelievable. There's people who, and that's why I think we all connected, because you guys get it. I've brought some of the best guys, some of the worst guys around you. There's never no judgment. Not the worst guys, but guys who's been in bad situations, in and out of prison, so on and so forth. But there's some people who truly believe that, and I want you to explain this, and you. Some people I've had this conversation with people saying, your trauma doesn't matter. Whatever you grew up with, that doesn't matter. You can't use that as an excuse. Like, so what, somebody who was shot, so what, a cop harassed you, so what, this, that. Do you think that truly matters in your future?
Yeah, 100% matters. Like, the statistics don't lie, right? They don't lie.
Statistics can lie, but I'm not saying they are on this.
They don't lie.
But you can
No,
make
you
a
can
statistic
manipulate,
lie.
but broadly, like the numbers don't lie. 400 versus 5.
Can you break down why does that matter? I know it matters, but I want people who don't think it matters to understand why it matters so deeply.
Because I mean, if you think about the neighborhood,
As a 35-year-old, 40-year-old, 50-year-old man, does that still affect you?
sure it does. I mean, you don't have to let it affect you. You could process that trauma out. You can go back and re-educate yourself. But the schools in those neighborhoods suck compared to the schools in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
D versus A,
Yeah.
not B versus B minus. Right? The playgrounds usually suck versus the playgrounds on the West Side Highway. The parks aren't as nice. There's more trash on the ground. And so you're growing up with a scarcity mentality, not an abundance mentality. You're growing up not feeling safe. That makes it harder to study, right? Harder to focus. You're usually growing up with only one parent, right? Often a working parent. And so it's literally like saying, let's get in a race in a swimming pool, but you've got to put a 50-pound weight vest on. You're not going to beat me.
I mean, that's what Nate Parker said. And I think, and there's two pieces of what you're saying, right? One is the emotional trauma of having people like safety, violence thing. Another is just like crappy facilities. Both bad, but the trauma, I think, is the one that sticks with you, right?
Of course.
You know, in a sense, crappy facilities is just you got to get through that, right? But then you can have good, right? It's the trauma and those experiences that we all have to work to process out, right, to greater or lesser degrees. And I think, and the other school of thought not to just completely let go of is it's not that it doesn't matter, but in a way, this is your movie, right? And so you got to figure out what to deal with it anyway, because you can't reverse time and you can't go back. You can only fix things going forward, either within yourself or systems. And so that's where I think it can be misinterpreted. It's not like it doesn't matter, but at the other hand, you can't dwell in it.
But sometimes you don't even know it's happening.
That's right.
But you can argue. So there's always this idea of teach a man to fish or give a man a fish. Right? And so Republicans like to teach a man a fish, and the Democrats are often accused of giving the man a fish, and then the guy becomes dependent on the fish. Government can help people process and get out of where they were. And so there's like a hybrid in between there, right? The process of mental health, the process of trauma recovery, the process, that can be a government service. And it should be a government service. Well, that's what Robinhood does a whole lot of, right? Trying to figure out how to get private money to help with government money to provide those services. But again, if you don't, it's just going to repeat the cycle over and over. And one of the most depressing things, Robinhood is one of the most inspirational nights. One of the most depressing things is some of the smartest and wealthiest guys in New York for 35 years have been battling poverty in the city, and it's worse today than it was 35 years ago.
Wow.
There are more kids going to bed food insecure today than there were 35 years ago. It's just a hard problem. Now, that's not because of Robinhood. It's because the macro, right, of our whole world is the rich-poor gap gets wider and wider. People from bad neighborhoods are falling further and further behind. The gap in schools is getting wider. So
let me. Wait, do you want to say something else?
I think just one thing on what your answer was. I think there needs to be, we needed some kind of swear jar too for the word government or politics. But there needs to be something, because here's the thing. A lot of people do not even know they have trauma. So they live, good point right here, right? I was harassed by the cops growing up. I was this, that, and I was like, this is pretty normal. And you one day was like, no, that's not normal. And I swear to you.
Yeah, a fish doesn't know he's in water.
Yeah, I guess. But that's what I'm saying. So how do you, because if you recognize it, you would want to fix it, obviously. But most people don't even recognize it, including me. I didn't even recognize it for a long time. So what do you do to try to even help these kids or adults recognize that something is actually wrong? Because that's the thing. You don't even know something's wrong.
But that's awareness, right?
Yeah, it's awareness. It's a complicated question. I mean, I think just having discussions about it, right?
Yeah.
Is like, I don't think there's a magic bullet, right? I think it's just like awareness, repetition, and just, and you find it when you find it in a sense, and you
Yeah.
just have to be exposed to it, which is part of the reason we do this.
Yeah.
So I want to just say one thing, but we're going to leave in a couple minutes. But we don't have an ounce of gold when it's just the three of us. So what I wanted to do is say, we get questions and also things are in the news. What?
I want a next year.
And we'll do it next year at the very end. But I wanted 90 to 120 seconds because people like to learn something on this, right? Tariffs is a big thing people are talking about right now. Do we like tariff, right? They're slapping them on China. Explain what a tariff is. Do we like them? Do we not like them in 190
That's
seconds?
what I was about to say.
90 seconds.
What is a tariff? I've been hearing a lot about it.
So listen.
And what is the difference with that and tax?
Tariffs and tax are kissing cousins. Tariffs are when a government says, like, let's say Dave's China, we're going to put a tariff, an additional price on every car you sell into the United States, making Chinese cars that much more expensive. We're taking tax revenue.
So it's a tax on imports.
It's a tax on imports and protecting our domestic industry. We often do it because we say, hey, that country's cheating. They're subsidizing. That means the government's giving their private companies money so they can make their TVs cheaper or their cars cheaper or their wheat cheaper and put our domestic companies out of business. And so we're saying, you're not being fair. We won't be fair either. And what happens is, who loses? Often the consumer loses because the prices go higher, right? So it's like, we'll show you, we're putting tariffs on electric vehicles. Well, then Tesla can push their prices higher. And so it's inflationary and it slows the economy down.
Now, the counterpoint to it would be that, domestic industry gets negatively affected if the government doesn't protect, if indeed another country such as China is dumping cars for below the cost, right, or certainly way below the cost of American cars, then what can happen is it can wreck the American car industry, jobs get
That's what
lost.
happened in the steel industry through the entire time me and him had graduated from school. Steel went just straight down. Cheaper to make steel in India, cheaper to make steel in Korea, cheaper to make steel in China.
So some of it is it's just cheaper to make certain products in certain countries because of labor forces and expertises, and other times it might be government subsidizing certain products. But it's a complicated issue that we're not going to get onto right here, but I think it's just, 30 seconds, you think raising tariffs in general on cars, what's being considered right now, is good, bad, indifferent?
I think it's inflationary in a time when we don't need anything inflationary. Inflation is beating the working and middle class of America senseless. It just is. Me and you, we don't notice the inflation. But if you're middle class, working class in America, food inflation, rent inflation, college inflation, educational inflation, all of it is making it harder and harder to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why credit card debt is going up. And so we've got to beat inflation. Right. And it's slowly coming down, but not fast enough.
Right. So basically, you vote no tariffs, or if there are tariffs, slight tariffs, not exorbitant tariffs to protect the industry.
Yep.
Before we go, I should have said this in the beginning, but please comment, like, share. What else, Dave?
That's it.
Subscribe.
Subscribe. And that's it. Another episode of
1,
Be
2,
You.
3. Knicks!
Nick.
Let's go next.
All right.